Buddy is a human adopted by Papa Elf of the North Pole, finding himself at Santa's workshop as a baby, having crawled into Santa's sack of presents. Upon discovering that his biological father lives in New York, and also has his name on the naughty list, Buddy travels to the Big Apple to make up for lost time with his father, a selfish and cold publisher who wants very little to do with his adult biological son. This is Jon Favreau's Elf, a light festive comedy starring Will Farrell as a human who has lived a sheltered life up at the North Pole, and the positivity, love and joy he experienced living within a community of elves having a gradually positive effect on a world that is not quite used to such exuberant optimism and naivety. Elf is a bouncy film, aiming to spread its festive cheer towards the audience as much as Buddy attempts to spread such cheer amongst the people who are reluctant to accept it. Elf is basically a small fish in a big pond comedy, taking a character away from his comforts and placing his optimistic self within a more cynical world, leading to amusing encounters and misunderstandings, such as Buddy waving at a man who is attempting to hail a cab, or bursting into a coffee shop advertising the greatest cup of coffee in the world and congratulating them for their achievement. Elf's sense of humour is based within a very sweetly sticky kindness, much like the sweets and candies people eat during Christmas. This kindness within Buddy's character, and his reaction to a critical, colder world than he is used to, is briskly and brilliantly summarised in a brief scene with a raccoon. A goofy gag, but thematically effective. Buddy, on his journey from the North Pole to New York, discovers a raccoon and attempts to make friends with it. As the raccoon hisses at him, defensive, Buddy's reaction is to give the raccoon a hug, eventually discovering that not everyone will be positively responsive to his distinct brand of kindness. Buddy, unprepared for a tough world, offers to provide a hug, believing that a hug can solve all of his problems, when in actuality it just can't. This scene, intended as a quick gag, is surprisingly effective in demonstrating Elf's relationship with conflict between Buddy's kindness and a world not prepared for such optimism. It clearly demonstrates Buddy's lack of self-awareness as an outsider to the wider world, having lived a sheltered life before this point, and an outsider protagonist holds a layer of relatability for many viewers. Who hasn't felt that struggle to find where they belong, where they fit in? While Elf remains a light family-friendly romp, there are examples of humour clearly aimed towards adults who may be more reluctant to the movie's over-the-top charms. For example, when Santa Claus is preparing Buddy for the vast differences of New York, he suggests that if Buddy sees something called a peep show in New York, it's not where they allow you to open your presents early. Another example of humour intended for adults who would understand the reference is when Buddy is spotted on a local news broadcast in Central Park, helping Santa fix his sleigh. Buddy's movement is exactly like Bigfoot's in the infamous Patterson-Gimlin footage, serving as an amusing quick-fire visual gag that, while not particularly explicit, children may not quite appreciate the visual humour here if they are unaware of the original visual reference. Sprinkling a light family comedy with humour for adults aids in appealing to parents watching the film with their children, adding a layer of accessibility for adults who have had to struggle through numerous less thoughtful children's movies before. It also adds an enduring appeal to Elf, that once the children have grown up and revisit this Christmas comedy they loved when they were younger with eyes full of nostalgia, the more adult humour will add a surprising enjoyment to the experience revisiting the film. Elf is also a playful, self-aware film, scenes at the North Pole almost serving as a parody of the traditional Christmas specials such as Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which is reinforced by Elf's use of an Arctic sky that feels like it was coloured in by a child's use of a wax crayon, and stop-motion characters exaggerating the sense of the fantastical, while also keeping these characters insignificant enough that they have very little bearing on the story, while still adding to the hyper-innocent aesthetic often associated with Christmas films. Yes, Buddy does confide briefly with stop-motion winter animals and a talking snowman, but the implication that these characters have a history with Buddy that we don't really get to see adds to the film's sly jab at the Christmas specials of yesteryear and the lack of permanence with their supporting characters. This is a more modern approach to the Christmas movie, challenging what is expected and stereotyped of traditional Christmas films. Will Farrell as Buddy may either strike irritation and frustration into the viewer's soul, or his performance may warm the viewer's heart. If Will Farrell, during one of his peak comedic performances, which is still loud, energetic, bouncy and easily excitable, does not have you intrigued, then Elf is likely not for you. The stereotypes of Will Ferrell's performance style consisting of shouting, Saturday Night Live-esque improv, and high energy are not challenged here, and Elf may have even done its part to cement Will Ferrell's comedic approach in this way. Plenty of Elf's humour comes from Will Ferrell's reactions to things his character Buddy is unaware of. However, Will Ferrell's shows moments of surprising tenderness within Elf too, such as when he overhears Zooey Deschanel's Jovi singing in the changing room, and he quietly sings along, knowing full well that she could sing in the first place. It ends in a burst of humour as Jovi becomes aware of Buddy in the women's changing room, but it's a humour born from innocence and kindness. With Elf's approach to New York romanticism as well, Will Farrell's performance actually has a surprising tenderness at times. The brand of humour found within Elf is surprisingly kind and forgiving, never quite punching down at marginalised groups, with possibly the exception of Will Farrell calling Peter Dinklage an elf. But this is remedied due to Peter Dinklage's character, Miles Finch, having a strong backbone and calling out Buddy's unintentional ableist language before lashing out at him. What is incredibly satisfying within Elf is how Buddy's sense of kindness and joy can be so infectious for the scenarios he finds himself in. For example, when Buddy is stuck in a publishing house's mailroom, Buddy, with the aid of mistaking whiskey in his coffee for maple syrup, gets dancing on the table, boosting the morale of the workers. Scenes like this, or when Buddy redecorates the toy department at Gimbals, are genuinely fun to watch as Buddy discovers elements of his elf-like personality don't make him a complete outsider, and it is satisfying to see this eccentric character thriving, especially when we see it bringing joy to those around him, like in the mailroom. When Buddy is able to publish his experiences as a short story for children, it's overly sentimental, albeit with a little cynical jab regarding merchandising, something that Elf has itself fallen into due to its widespread success. Yet it's also a satisfying ending for this character. With kindness and optimism through his stories and experiences, Buddy spreads the Christmas cheer he is just so totally about. While the wider world may not have been ready for him, he finds his place within it, within the workplace, within his family, not sacrificing his integrity, his sense of self or his personality, but also no longer remaining an outsider. He now belongs. In conclusion, Jon Favreau's Elf has held its own as a festive film favourite due to its tale of an outsider in a world where he struggles to fit in, and its mixture of heart and high-energy humour. At its centre, Elf holds a genuine kindness that, while maybe not appealing to everyone due to its highly sentimental nature, and due to Will Ferrell's performance leaning on a brand of humour that can be very polarising, if its sense of kindness and humour clicks, it really clicks. Will Ferrell's man-child persona taps into the appeal to our own inner children, to that internal sense of innocence. Elf is certainly deserving of its place as a more recent popular Christmas classic.